Democrats will not support a blank check for chaos. Republicans chose chaos, and the Democrats, we refused. Republicans chose to put a bill on the floor that ignored the abuses, ignored the outrage, ignored what the American people want overwhelmingly. And they failed to get the votes to avoid a shutdown at DHS. As we've said for weeks, if Republicans want to keep DHS funded, they need to get serious.
Well, the Department of Homeland Security set to shut down at midnight tonight after Senate Democrats blocked a House-passed stopgap funding to keep the operations going for 2 weeks. The vote failed 52-47, short of the 60 required votes needed. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, the only Democrat who voted yes. Now, 260,000 federal workers are at risk of being furloughed. Border Czar Tom Homan, meanwhile, said that the Trump administration has wrapped up its large-scale immigration enforcement operation in Minnesota, known as Operation Metro Surge. He says ICE rescued over 3,000 missing unaccompanied migrant children during that time. Joining me now is Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. The House and the Senate won't be back in session until February 23rd, and DHS could be shut down for at least 10 days. What's the impact?
Oh, the impact is huge, Maria. It's not just about ICE operations, which, by the way, a lot of them were funded in the president's agenda last summer, One Big Beautiful Bill, where we passed the largest middle-class tax cut, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. So you're talking about Border Patrol, not just ICE. So our border agents who are protecting this nation, they are now at risk. Nobody really likes going through there, but you're talking about TSA agents. They could be furloughed. And we know what happens when you have longer security lines at our airports. It frustrates the American people. It slows down air travel. We just went through this last fall when the Democrats pulled their last government shutdown stunt. You're talking about customs and immigration, customs enforcement. That gets shut down. The United States Coast Guard, that gets shut down. And listen, in Florida, we just had a major freeze of crops in our state. And who also gets shut down because of the Democrats' craziness is FEMA. So the Democrats have decided that they would rather shut down vital aspects of the American government to secure this homeland because over ICE. And the truth of the matter is the reason why the ICE situation has become what it is not because of Donald Trump. It's because of Tim Walz. It's because of Keith Ellison. It's because of Jacob Frey and the radical Democrats who want to return to the Biden years where our borders were wide open and ICE had no ability to do anything about it.
Yeah, well, look, we were talking about this with the Speaker just this week, Mike Johnson. I mean, I'm just wondering, is this all politics or are they actual serious people here? Watch what the Speaker told me. Watch.
We are at an impasse. The White House, the administration, President Trump and his team have been working in good faith with Senate Democrats to try to work through this. And they've made some proposals to change some of the immigration enforcement and sort of calm the situation. But Chuck Schumer and Democrats have shown no willingness whatsoever to go along on any of these negotiations. I think, Maria, they are trying to put us into another government shutdown situation.
And here we are once again at midnight. But look, they're also pushing back on election integrity, Congressman. The House passed the 32-page Save America Act in a vote 218 to 213. This election integrity bill, obviously supported by President Trump, it would require proof of citizenship to register to vote and show an ID to cast a ballot. What's wrong with that? And yet it is facing an uphill battle in the Senate, where strong Democrat opposition and the filibuster requirement may block it from reaching the 60 votes needed. Congressman, Chuck Schumer said this is dead on arrival in the Senate. Do you think this ever comes to light of day?
I think there's a possibility, and this is where Leader Thune is going to have to require that they use Senate rules to have a talking filibuster. What that means is Senate Democrats, Chuck Schumer and anybody else, they're going to have to go to the floor of the Senate, and they're going to have to explain to the American people why they oppose this measure. And I'm quite sure in that process, you will have Senate Republicans like Mike Lee and many others, like Rick Scott and Ashley Moody, who will be on the floor of the Senate explaining to the American people why it is common sense to make sure that you have to prove you're an American citizen if you're going to be registered to vote. It's common sense to have to show up with a voter ID to prove that you are who you say you are when you go to cast the ballot. These are common sense measures, but the Democrats do not care about common sense. The Democrats are truly the party of chaos, because if you look at everything that occurs when they don't get their way, what do? They stamp their feet, they put their heads in the sand, they threaten shutdowns, they work with outside groups to create organized protests that do nothing but sow chaos and create these flashpoints, which are all over social media and media, because they cannot get their way with logic and reason. They go to chaos and emotion. And that's not how you govern a country. That's where the Democrats have taken us. So Leader Thune needs to move to the talking filibuster, not just the 60-vote threshold, to get this through.
Yeah, we heard from Wisconsin Congressman Byron Style about it. Brian Style about it yesterday. Here's what he said. Watch. Said it's dead on arrival when it gets to the Senate. So how are you going to do any of that?
Well, ultimately, this is going to be a question as to whether or not the Senate continues with their zombie filibuster. I think a lot of us in the House, conservatives, are frustrated as we send good quality legislation over to the Senate to only watch it get filibustered with no one actually going to the floor and speaking to prevent it. They're simply allowing senators to sit on the sidelines, say they don't have 60 votes, not move forward. It's incredibly frustrating. I think Senator Thune is in a position here to try to drive forward true, substantive, conservative reforms while we control the House, the Senate, and the White House.
I mean, you know, we've seen the numbers, Congressman, and basically a majority of Republicans and increasing numbers of Democrats agree that we should have ID to vote. Well, you know, what's wrong with that? But I want to get to Florida, because you're running for governor of the great state of Florida, and a pro-AI super PAC is preparing to spend about $5 million to support your campaign, as well as broader educational effort, which is highlighting AI's benefits to Florida's economic future. But at the same time, we've got a new report showing that data centers are facing growing policy headwinds due to pressure on energy prices. 25 data center projects were canceled or postponed this month. You've got people like Bernie Sanders and Richard Blumenthal criticizing rapid data center expansion because they claim that it's eating up too much power. What do you want to say about that and the impact on AI on Florida?
Well, the power generation question with AI is real. And so moving forward in the state of Florida, these data center projects are going to have to prove that they're not going to take away from the power grid, that they're not going to raise utility prices on Florida consumers. That's going to be critical in this. But we also have to have a plan of how we're going to proceed forward. I know that the president has been working with some of these data center creators, Senator Cruz as well. They created some additional flexibility around on-site generation for data centers, so they're not costing per kilowatt hour increases for the American people. That's a positive first step. In Florida, we're going to have to really think outside the box. But Maria, one of the things that we are going to have to consider is where data is warehoused. I know when people use their phones or use their computers or they're streaming shows or they're using AI, people have to understand that actually all the searches get done at a data center. So in Florida, the question is, where do you want the data warehoused? Do you want the data warehoused in California, Northern Virginia, New York, or do you want it warehoused in Florida? Or do you want that data warehoused overseas? One of the things that I think is critical is power. That's a critical thing we have to address. And with AI writ large, it's about making sure our kids are protected and parents are well informed about what's happening. But we're going to have a serious strategy about how we move forward.
You're right, because you've got to balance the idea that the U.S. wants to be the capital of AI for the world, the leader of the world, and all this money moving into data centers, and the impact on power is real. Congressman, it's good to see you. We'll be following your work. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. We'll be right back. Stay with us.